Let me bring Emma, come on out, and then I'd like to introduce you again, Imogen Booth and Tim Buckley.
So I'm going to go right to the audience so we can get some of your questions in right away. Are there any questions? Yes, right there. The question is about Penn Buckley's preparation for this role, taking on this iconic figure.
Yeah, you know, I mean, that's a broad question. You're right, you said. You're right, it's very musical. I mean, I answered this like succinctly. You know, it was a deeply moving experience. A man whose music I love, and you know, it's just I poured every ounce of myself into it. You know, it wasn't as kind of cut and dry as you would think. It wasn't like learning his music, because obviously not a lot of his music was in there. It's much more about just, you know, acting.
Any other questions? Yes, right there.
I guess for everyone who participated in the film, were you familiar with the works of both artists beforehand, or was it something you learned as you were filming?
This is a question for everyone on the stage. Were you familiar with the works of both Tim and Jeff Buckley before you started this project, or was there a learning process?
Well, yes, we were, there was some familiarity, but the whole point is, as we did the film, what Penn, I think, was trying to say, as we made the film, we learned a great deal. We created a great deal from what we learned, and I think Penn, and so that's what brought some things to yourself, because otherwise it would be just idiocy up there. What do we know about real Jeff Buckley at that moment and before this or that?
That's actually a really valid point. I think, like, you know, to answer your question, like, what did I do to prepare for it to like play such a ridiculous guy? It's really more about like, you know, fuck it if I can like hit the same notes or whatever. It's like there's a million people out there with amazing voices. It's really about like you know, the reason that people love this man, the reason that the both of them really, you know, they spoke to something, and you know, people will hear their music, and it's one of those things where you just have to try and get at the larger soulful art that they were getting at, rather than like, you know, micromanaging an impersonation or mimicry, you know. So I think that's maybe the coolest thing about it, is it was just about like finding the same kind of art, soul and art that they were.
You know, I was actually a huge Tim Buckley fan, particularly, and I think what was really interesting was the notion of this genius who created 9 albums before he died, and he was incredibly important politically, had a lot to say, was the voice of his generation, and here's his son who's living in the shadow of that, and I found that to be the most interesting part of it, that everything that was great about him was a problem for Jeff.
No one's, you know, we're just rather than all things we discovered about him, you know, during the filming, but and the writing and filming. But the truth is, when we listened, the moment we listened to the concert, actually, we listened to the concert sort of on the web. There's a recording of it. It's there. You can just listen to it. It was like 3 hours.
You're talking about the real concert.
The real concert. Yeah, listen to the real concert. It's like, wow, there's nothing happening in this concert really that much until this guy comes out, and then you see the whole movie. You see the whole story of his life in like 4 or 5 songs. You hear it. You hear him change.
Yeah. I think a lot of people hearing it too, like, you know, Jeff was finding his voice, and that's what this is about, you know. I mean, it's like, he in that concert, you're hearing like a kid who's becoming a man, sort of, and that's the story. And then also to answer the other question, yeah, I knew Jeff's music, loved his music, had for a long time, and then Tim I'd really never heard, and actually didn't listen too much while we were shooting, because I was so focused on Jeff, I think, maybe unintentionally. it's like kind of unbelievable how little I did listen to Tim until now, and I love Tim's music.
Imogen, do you want to interject?
Yeah, I mean, I was very familiar with both of their music. But again, like, the making of the film is just, to me, kind of what it is to make music. And there was a lot of time there, and a lot of time spent with musicians just jamming around and preparing for the real concert that you see in the movie. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of going into it with some fundamentally ridiculous. Just music stuff, looking about things.
Any other questions? Yes, over here. The questions depend again, and it's about what character traits or attributes of Jeff Buckley did you feel were important to bring to your performance?
A lot of like this, a lot like he was sort of feminine and feline, and you know, I think the biggest thing that I kept in my head was my voice. My speaking voice is a lot lower than his. It's like almost like an octave lower. I mean, you know, and if I walk around being like, hi, you know, I'm Jeff, the whole time, I would sound kind of like an asshole. So, you know, the biggest thing was like evoking that gentleness of his while being myself, because I couldn't think of I was like mimicking him. It would just, again, it would just be absurd. It would look ridiculous because it's like he's so specific and he's Jeff and I'm not him. Yeah, it was just like evoking the gentle sweetness, the beautiful kind of magical qualities of him, and not being ashamed of the thing.
Yep. No, I don't. I was just remembering, I mean, it was Fred Zolo's idea to do this film, and he just kept coming in and saying, Fred, yeah, all the producers, everyone involved, but Fred used to come, he'd drive me home, he would say, like, he'd talk about things, he said, there's 5 octaves winning, 5 octaves winning, and then he posted me up, and I said, this is Jeff, I didn't like it. 5 octave range. 12 octave range. It's like, well, he says, it's a move. It's a move. That's okay. It just needs to be getting moving with it. So when anyone I was talking to him, I would feel like, okay, beginning, middle, end, but it has to be in that order. I said, no, but that's not how the producers act. Anyway, I laughed at that.
Actually, you know, my biggest challenge in this role was understanding Dan. and it really has been the most beautiful experience of my life, and the three of you people and everybody involved, it really was.
I unfortunately might have to wrap up there. Please join me in thanking Dan Alden and the cast and writers of Business and Tim Buckley.
What do you turn it off? What do you turn it off?